Back in 1918, while the world was already in the middle of the Great War, something else was stirring. A silent, invisible killer that would end up completely rewriting history. This wasn't a war fought in trenches with guns. No, this was a war fought inside the human body. So let's unpack the story of the 1918 flu.
It all starts with a number, and it is a staggering one: 500 million. That's the best guess for how many people were infected across the globe. We're talking 1/3 of the entire human population at the time. It's almost impossible to wrap your head around that scale.
And that really brings us to the big question, doesn't it? I mean, it was just the flu, right? Something we deal with every year. So how on earth did this one virus manage to kill more people than World War I itself? Well, the answers are a crazy mix of bad luck, terrible timing, and some truly frightening biology. Okay, so first things first, we have to clear something up. We need to unravel a lie that's been around for over 100 years. Most of us know this pandemic as the Spanish flu. But that name? It's completely wrong. It's basically a piece of wartime propaganda, because this flu did not start in Spain.
So here's what was happening. All the big countries fighting in World War I, the US, Britain, France, Germany, they had heavy wartime censorship. They suppressed any news about a flu outbreak among their troops because they couldn't afford a hit to morale. But Spain was neutral. Their press was free, so they reported on it honestly, even when their own king got sick. So naturally, the rest of the world started calling it the Spanish flu, all because they were the only ones telling the truth about it. So if not Spain, then where did it actually come from? Well, the leading theories point to military camps, maybe Camp Funston in Kansas, or a huge British base in France. Just imagine the conditions. These places were the perfect storm. You have thousands of young soldiers crammed together in really unhygienic barracks, often right next to pigs and poultry. It was the perfect breeding ground for a brand new, deadly virus to jump to humans.
Now, this virus didn't just show up and start killing everyone at once. It was sneakier than that. It came in waves, and each wave had its own distinct, terrible personality. To really get why this was so deadly, you have to understand the timeline.
So the first wave hit in the spring of 1918, and it was contagious, sure, but it wasn't that deadly. It felt like a bad flu season, and most people recovered. But then, somewhere over that summer, the virus changed. It mutated. And the second wave that slammed the world in the fall, well, that was an entirely different beast. That was the killer.
And if you want to see just how unbelievably fast and devastating that second wave was, we just have to look at one American city, Philadelphia, and one single, absolutely catastrophic decision. On September 28th, city officials decided to hold a massive parade to raise money for the war. Doctors were begging them to cancel it, but they didn't listen. Just 72 hours later, 3 days, every single hospital bed in Philadelphia was full. 1 week after the parade, the city's morgues were overflowing. The entire system just collapsed. Thousands were dead, all from that one event.
But here's where the story gets even more terrifying. The thing that baffled everyone at the time. Unlike a typical flu that goes after the very young and the very old, this virus was different. Its prime targets were healthy young adults, people in their 20s and 30s, right in the prime of their lives. Why?
Well, the answer's inside us. It's a biological glitch that can turn our body's greatest weapon, our immune system, against us. It's called a cytokine storm. I mean, just look at this. It's the complete opposite of what you'd expect. A normal flu picks off people with weaker immune systems. But the 1918 flu? It went straight for people with the strongest immune systems. Soldiers, workers, young parents. It turned their own strength into the weapon that killed them. A cytokine storm is basically a catastrophic meltdown of your immune system. The virus triggers this massive response, but the off switch gets broken. Your body's defenses go into overdrive and cause way more damage than the virus itself. The tragic irony is, the stronger and healthier you were, the more aggressive your immune response was, and the more likely you were to die. So here's how it would happen. The virus gets into your lungs. Your healthy immune system sounds the alarm and launches an all-out war, flooding your lungs with immune cells and fluids. But the attack never stops. The lungs just keep filling up with this fluid until you literally drown from the inside out.
It was horrific. Doctors and nurses said they could tell who was about to die just by looking at them. Their faces would turn this dark, bluish-purple color from the lack of oxygen. It was called heliotrope cyanosis. The speed was just terrifying. People said you could be perfectly healthy at breakfast and dead by dinner time.
So, a disease this brutal doesn't just kill individuals. It tears apart the very fabric of society. The whole world, already exhausted by war, just ground to a halt.
Does any of this sound familiar? Schools, churches, theaters, all shut down. Many cities made wearing a mask mandatory. The economy completely stalled because there weren't enough healthy people to work. It got so bad there weren't even enough grave diggers to bury the dead. Mass graves became chillingly common.
When the pandemic finally burned itself out, it left behind a scarred world. But you know, out of all that tragedy, some really profound lessons were learned that still shape our world today. But first, the final toll. It's a number that's almost too big to comprehend. The conservative estimate is 50 million people dead worldwide. Some historians think it could be as high as 100 million. That just dwarfs the number of soldiers killed in the war.
And yet, some good did come from it. The pandemic showed that even without a cure, good nursing, just providing comfort, fluids, and care, could save lives. It really professionalized the field of nursing. It also forced governments to realize they needed centralized public health departments to handle crises like this. But the craziest part? So many of the other lessons, things like social distancing and wearing masks, were almost completely forgotten for decades.
And that brings us to the last big puzzle. How does the world forget something that killed 50 million people? I mean, for most of the 20th century, the 1918 flu was barely even a footnote in the history books. How is that possible?
The answer, it seems, is psychological. The world was already dealing with the massive collective trauma of World War I. Dying from a disease at home felt different. It felt random, private, almost shameful compared to dying a hero's death in battle. So families just grieved in silence, and an entire generation just buried the memory.
If you really want to grasp the unbelievable speed of this thing, think about this statistic. The 1918 flu killed more people in just 24 weeks than HIV/AIDS has in 24 years. It was like a wildfire that swept across the entire planet and then just burned itself out.
And that leaves us right here with a really important thought. Maybe the biggest danger isn't just a new virus, but our own tendency to forget, to think it can't happen again. So we have to ask ourselves, was 1918 just a freak one-time event? Or was it a dress rehearsal, a warning that history fired at us, that we're still, even today, trying to fully understand?